Hello, good evening. It is Saturday night. Well, you'll be watching this on Saturday night anyway. This devotional video nearly didn't happen today because I've had one of those really pants days. Happens to us all. It's just been one of those where you kind of like, you want to write it off and just go, let's never do a day like that again. Just stuff with work and things that are just got to me a bit today. But I'm actually really thankful that I was asked to do these devotional videos because it forced me to refocus, to sit down and to think about God's word and think about God. And it kind of made me pick myself up a bit out of my moment, give myself a little bit of a shake and go, right, come on, get a grip. Let's do something positive with today. And that's what I hope this devotion can do for you as well. If you've had one of those days or weeks or Aprils, if you've had some of that time where you just think, oh, let's not do that again, then I want you to know you're not alone. It's not you. It happens to all of us, especially at times like this. And I hope that something that we chat about this evening can help encourage you and maybe lift your spirits a little bit, because it has for me. So as we're all settling in and as people will be logging on and getting ready, I'm going to follow again in the pet trend of including pets in your video. I'm going to introduce you to one of our pets. Oh, come on. This is Toothless. Hello, Toothless. She is our bearded dragon. She actually likes looking at the camera, that's why her head keeps moving. But she's one of our bearded dragons. She's a morph bearded dragon, which means she's really pretty. She's not just brown and green. And she's probably about half the size that she'll end up being in her whole life. So this is her. Hello. Hello. Luke did actually challenge me to do this video with her on my head the whole time. However, if you've ever had a bearded dragon, they are runners. They're pretty quick. So I decided not to have to pause the video halfway through and chase her across the living room. So I'm introducing you to her, and now she's going to go back in her nice warm little cage, aren't you? Okay, there you go. Exotic pet moment. Right, sit there. Okay, let's crack on. We are reading the Bible, and we are looking this evening at, where are we looking? We're looking at Judges chapter 13. And it is the beginning of the story of Samson. Many of you may have known this story through Sunday school or through school lessons, anything like that. Let's start reading Judges chapter 13. I'm reading from the Message version this evening, just again because I really like the wording of it. And then the people of Israel were back at it again, doing what was evil in God's sight. So God put them under the domination of the Philistines for 40 years. At that time there was a man named Manoah from Zorah, from the tribe of Dan. His wife was barren and childless. And the angel of God appeared to her and told her, I know that you are barren and childless, but you're going to become pregnant and bear a son. But take much care. Drink no wine or beer, and eat nothing ritually unclean. You are, in fact, pregnant right now, carrying a son. No razor will touch his head, for the boy will be God's Nazirite from the moment of his birth. He will launch the deliverance from Philistine oppression. Now, a Nazirite, if you've never heard of that term before, you can Google it. It comes from the Hebrew word nazir, which means consecrated or separated, set apart. So it's someone who would make a vow. Usually it was a temporary vow, but in the case of Samson, it was a lifelong vow because it was made by his parents before he was born. And it was someone who was set apart to serve God and do something distinctive for God. So that's what a Nazirite is. So the woman went to her husband and said, a man of God came to me. He looked like the angel of God. He was terror laced with glory. I didn't ask him where he was from, and he didn't tell me his name, but he told me, you're pregnant. You're going to give birth to a son. Don't drink any wine or beer and eat nothing ritually unclean. The boy will be God's Nazarite from the moment of birth until the day of his death." Manoah prayed to God, "Master, let the man of God you sent come to us again and teach us how to raise this boy who is to be born." God listened to Manoah, and God's angel came again to the woman. She was sitting in the field, and her husband wasn't there with her. So she jumped to her feet and ran and told her husband, "He's back, the man who came to me that day." Manoah got up and, following his wife, came to the man. He said to him, "Are you the man who spoke to my wife?" He said, "I am." Manoah said, "So, when what you say comes true, what do you have to tell us about this boy and his work?" The angel of God said to Manoah, "Keep in mind everything I told the woman. Eat nothing that comes from the vine, drink no wine or beer, and eat no ritually unclean foods. She's to observe everything I commanded her." Manoah said to the angel of God, "Please stay with us a little longer. We'll prepare a meal for you, a young goat." But God's angel said to Manoah, "Even if I stay, I won't eat your food. But if you want to prepare a whole burnt offering for God, go ahead, offer it." Manoah had no idea he was talking to the angel of the Lord. In the Old Testament, the phrase "the angel of the Lord" was used to actually say God, that was God. So when the angel of the Lord appeared to people, a lot of academics consider that to be God appeared to those people. Manoah asked the angel of God, "What is your name? When will your words come true? We'd like to honour you." And the angel of God said, "What's this? You ask for my name? You wouldn't understand. It's sheer wonder." So Manoah took the kid and the grain offering and sacrificed them on a rock altar to God who works wonders. As the flames leapt up from the altar to heaven, God's angel also ascended into the altar flames. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell face down to the ground, and Manoah and his wife never saw the angel of the Lord again. Only then did Manoah realize that this was God's angel, as in this was God. He said to his wife, "We're as good as dead. We've looked at God." But his wife said, as wives do, in a very practical tone, "If God were planning to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted our whole burnt offering and grain offering, or revealed all of these things to us and given us this birth announcement." The woman gave birth to a son. They named him Samson. The boy grew and God blessed him. The Spirit of God began working in him while he was staying at a Danite camp between Zorah and Eshtaol. That is the story of the beginning of the story of Samson. I've got a few thoughts to share with you about this story. Lots of the things I've got to say are particularly relevant to parents, considering that this passage is all about two parents, the parents of Samson. But they also apply to people who have anyone special in their lives. It doesn't have to be a child. It can be a family member, it can be a close friend, any other relative. All these principles will apply to you as well. But particularly, they can be quite specific for parents. One thing that struck me in this was God gave Samson's mother instructions of what to do up until his birth. So God said, "You must not drink any wine or fermented drink. You must not touch anything unclean." And these were all things that a Nazarite had to do. They weren't allowed to drink any alcohol, any products from the vine, nothing fermented. They weren't allowed to cut their hair or have a razor touch their head. In fact, some people think that they weren't even allowed to comb their hair because that would mean that hair would come out. They weren't allowed to touch or be near dead bodies or graves because that would also make them unclean and break their vow. So God gave very clear instructions of what Samson's mum was to do up until his birth. And it kind of struck me that actually, as somebody who was a Nazarite, who was separated and consecrated for God from birth, he gave her instructions up to birth because after birth, he didn't belong to her anymore. He belonged to God. And it's always saying it's not up to his mum to look after him anymore. It's up to God. And there's a little revelation moment in there that all parents need to have at some stage. At some point, you need to get to to get to the stage where you can say, there's only so much I can do. There's only so much influence I can have over my children. There's only so much I can protect them and care for them. After that, it's over to God. And I think this is a good illustration of that. Actually, God said, look, you're looking after them whilst you're pregnant, while he's growing inside you. He's your responsibility to look after. But after that, he belongs to me. Hand him over to me. Trust me with him. And that's a key point for parents. You have to trust God with your children. There are certain key moments maybe in life where that becomes especially prominent. My children are still quite young, so the main one for me has been first day at school or first day at nursery. Your child is no longer with you 24/7. They're off out into the world. You can't control what happens to them or how they feel. You're not going to be there to support them if something goes wrong. And the first day of school is as nerve-wracking for a parent, if not more, than it is for the child. I think teachers will tell you the same as well. When Caleb started nursery, when I went to work full time, I dropped him off at the room. He was really happy. He was quite pleased to go. He settled quite well. I'd given them a massive handover sheet that they asked you to fill in of his nap times, when he has milk, when he has water, what sort of things he does and doesn't like to eat, what nappies he wears, when he has a nappy change. I packed like 12 nappies in his nursery bag. I don't know how long I thought he was staying there, but I wanted to make sure he had everything he needed. So gave them everything, left him, went off to work. And after about half an hour, I just had this sudden moment of going, I didn't tell them what he says if he wants milk. Because there are certain words that Caleb can't say properly, he still can't now. But there are certain words that he just made up completely alternative words for when he was younger. So he could never say milk. He always called it lobe. I don't know why, but it was lobe. Lobe, please. Lobe, please. But I hadn't said that. And so I had this moment of like, just imagining him sat there at the snack table when they were offering him water or milk, and he'd be saying, lobe, lobe, please. And they would have no clue what he was saying. And I was just like devastated for him, thinking, oh no, he's going to be so upset. So I actually phoned nursery. And I said to the lady on reception, I said, I'm really, really sorry. I need to leave a message for Caleb's key worker. Can you just let her know? She went, oh, you can speak to her if you want. I'll put her on. I was like, yes, brilliant. Just put her on the phone. And I said, I'm really sorry. I forgot to tell you something really important. And she went, oh, right, okay. And I said, he can't say milk, but he says the word lobe. And she went, oh, okay. And I don't know what she was thinking of me. I really don't. But I just felt like I had to do everything possible to give him the best chance of having a great day. And she said, well, that's fine. We didn't really know what he was saying, but we worked it out, and he's had milk twice already this morning. And that was me overthinking everything and kind of going, oh, I need to control it. I need to be there. I need to help him. I need to make sure he can do this. You know what? There are certain things that are out of your control as a parent. But the key thing to remember, it might be out of your control, but it is never out of God's. And as you grow as a parent and as a person in family context with people that you love, there's always those times where there is nothing more that you can do. You just have to give it over to God. You just have to trust God with that person or with that situation or with that promise or with that prophecy. You just got to trust God. So that's one thing I want you to pull out from this passage. The next thing is the bit about him being a Nazirite. Now, it always kind of hit me a bit with this story that that was a decision that was made for him. It wasn't made by him. It wasn't a vow that he chose to make. It was something that was imposed on him. And I don't know, I suppose I've always thought maybe that's why Samson was a bit of a rebel, really. Maybe that's why he kicked against things so much, because the path had been laid out before him, but it wasn't his choice. It wasn't something that he had decided to do. And again, thinking about being a parent and thinking about your children, don't make choices for your children. They have to make their own choice in life. If you want them to have ownership of their own choices and take responsibility for them, then they have to have made their own choice. They have to not be following something that you have forced them to do. it's very difficult because as parents we're told you have boundaries and you have rules, and these are all things to help protect your children, and they are. But even at a young age, you know, it's possible for children to choose. I constantly make this mistake. I just forget. I kind of automatically go, right, Caleb likes this to have for his dinner, Logan likes this, Caleb likes orange juice, Logan likes blackcurrant. So I'll automatically make them orange juice and blackcurrant. I forget to ask them. And every now and then Caleb will go, I wanted blackcurrant. And I'll go, oh, sorry, I didn't ask. And sometimes as parents we fall into those natural patterns. I mean, I know orange juice and blackcurrant, not going to change the world. But the principle is there. Are you making decisions for your children that they should be making for themselves? Are you laying a path before your kids that's your path, not their path? I think if you do this with your faith, it's a difficult line. You want to raise your children to love God and to know God and to know the truth of God's word. Of course we do. But what they believe is their own choice. If it's not their own choice, if it's not their personal choice to follow God, then it's religion, not relationship. And all that happens is it turns into resentment. Ooh, 3 hours, that's quite good. It turns into something that they don't want to be a part of, that like Samson they kick against, that they rebel against. And it's a hard line, and I think as parents we want the best for them, so we lay out this plan, but actually, as we sort of mentioned in this morning's devotion, if you were there, if not, catch it up online, your lifestyle is what separates you. It's what makes you different from the world around you. And your lifestyle as a parent is the most important way that you can lead your children into faith. Them seeing you make consistent choices that are based on God's word, worshipping God, having a relationship with God. That is what is going to lead them into their own relationship with God, not the rules that you have for them, not forcing them to be at church every Sunday, not forcing them to do the colouring worksheets on the website, even though they're brilliant. You know, it's the choice that they make following in the pattern that you're showing them as an example for them. Yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think it is important. And the last little bit that I pulled out from this passage was in verse 8. There's a verse here which I think every single parent has cried out at some point in their parenting journey. And it says this, let the man of God you sent come to us again. Teach us how to raise this boy. I think every parent has been there, haven't they? It's like, can someone just tell me what to do with these children? It's interesting that God doesn't give them an answer. It's so frustrating, because it would be great, wouldn't it? Where if it goes, teach us how to raise this boy, and God goes, okay, here you go. Here's a plan. Follow that. But I think there's a really, logical reason why God didn't do that. If he had provided us with a model of parenting, then everyone would follow it. The problem is that one size does not fit all. As with everything in life, anyone who's got more than one child will know that every child is different, completely different. Even if they have the same genes and are raised in the same household, they are chalk and cheese often, as is the case with my two beautiful children. There is no perfect way to raise a child, because there is no perfect child. God doesn't want you to have a prescription for your children in the same way that God doesn't want you to have a prescription for your relationship with him, or a prescription for church. There's no model of church laid out in the Bible. There's no sort of set thing that says this is how you do church, because it's about relationship, not about rules. Sorry. If you thought I was going to be there giving you like a little model of this is how to raise children, sorry, it's not happening. God didn't do it, so it's not up to anyone else to try to do it either. I think the story of Samson is a really interesting one, and if it's something that we're going to be looking at in devotions, that could be quite fun. But the three things that I sort of pulled out that have spoken to me from this passage today is that at some point you have to give your loved ones to God. You have to trust God with them. Hand them over. There's nothing else that you can do. Give them to God. God is big enough to look after them, to protect them, and to guide them. Don't make choices for your children or for other people in your family or your friends. They have to make their own choices if they're going to be responsible for them. And you want them to make that choice, to have relationship, not just to follow rules or religions. And there is no one way to do things. Parents, you need to hear that during lockdown. There is no one way to do it. There is not one timetable to follow. There's no one program of lessons for your children out there. No one is saying this is the way you do it. Well, actually, there's probably about 200 different websites at the moment saying this is how you do it. But the point is, there's so many because each child is different. You all know that. You've all experienced that. What God says in this passage about raising children is that He's there. He's there for you. He's there for them. He's got them. He's going to look after them. So don't worry about getting it right. Don't worry about being perfect when you raise your children. Just have that relationship with them. Have a relationship with God and show your children that relationship with God. And that is the best that you can do. I really hope that some of those things have encouraged you a little bit. I hope they've made sense. And I just hope that you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And hopefully we will see you tomorrow morning for Church Online, either on Facebook or on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless. Bye-bye.